The space station was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Taemin Park stood at the viewing window and watched alien ships dock at ports that stretched for miles in every direction. Some ships looked like giant crystals that glowed with their own light. Others moved like living creatures with wings and tentacles. A few were just balls of pure energy that somehow held together in the cold of space. Taemin wore a simple black suit that looked plain next to what everyone else was wearing. The other diplomats had robes that changed colors or armor that reflected starlight or bodies that were made of living metal. He looked like what he was supposed to look like. A quiet man from a small planet that nobody important cared about. "Sir, the ceremony starts in 1 hour," said Haina as she walked up behind him. She was young and smart and spoke 15 alien languages already. Her tablet showed the schedule for the day and all the names he would need to remember. "Ambassador Choi wants to review your speech one more time." "I do not think I will need to say much today," Taemin said without turning away from the window. His voice was soft and calm. "Sometimes it is better to listen first." Haina looked at her tablet again. The speech she had written for him was only 3 minutes long, but it had taken her weeks to get all the cultural details right. Different species had different ways of showing respect, and some things that humans thought were polite could start wars between alien races. "Commander Kim says the security sweep is complete," Haina said. "She found some strange energy readings in Sector 7, but the station crew says that is normal for this type of facility." Taemin nodded. So-Jin Kim was good at her job, and she worried about everything, which made her perfect for keeping people safe. She had brought 12 security officers with her, but they all had to leave their weapons on the human ship. The Galactic Council did not allow armed forces on their station except for their own guards. "Tell the commander I trust her judgment," Taemin said. "And tell Ambassador Choi I will meet him in the briefing room in 20 minutes. The corridors of the station were wide enough for creatures 3 times the size of humans. Taemin walked slowly and kept his hands visible at all times. This was basic diplomatic behavior that showed he was not a threat. Many of the aliens he passed were much larger and stronger than humans. Some had claws or natural weapons that could cut through metal. Others had technology built into their bodies that could kill from a distance. The briefing room was full of nervous energy. Ambassador Choi was pacing back and forth, while 3 other human diplomats sat around a table covered with datapads and cultural guides. They all looked up when Taemin entered. "Ah, good, you are here," said Ambassador Choi. He was older than Taemin and had been chosen to lead this mission because he was calm under pressure. "I just received word that 5 species have requested private meetings with us after the ceremony. The Veltari want to discuss trade agreements. The Morkan are interested in our military history. The others have not said what they want to talk about." "That is more interest than we expected," said Dr. Lee, who was their science advisor. "Maybe they are starting to see that humans have something to offer." Taemin sat down and accepted a cup of tea from Haina. It was earth tea, which tasted like home and helped him think clearly. "What do we know about the species that want these meetings?" "The Veltari are traders and builders," said Haina, reading from her tablet. "They value efficiency and direct communication. The Morkan are warriors who respect strength and honor. The Sektoth are researchers who study other species. The Growlnecks are energy beings who do not interact with physical matter very often. The Zortok are ancient and very secretive." "Interesting mix," said Taemin. "Any conflicts between these groups?" "The Veltari and Morkan have had border disputes for 200 years, said Dr. Lee. "The others are neutral or allied with different factions in the council. It is unusual for them to all request meetings on the same day." Ambassador Choi stopped pacing. "Do you think there is something we should be worried about?" Taemin drank his tea and thought about this question. In his experience, when enemies started working together, it usually meant they had found a bigger enemy to focus on. "We should be careful, but not afraid," he said finally. "We came here to make friends, and we will do our best to make friends." The ceremony hall was enormous. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds filled seats that were designed for every possible body type. The air was filled with translation devices that turned every language into every other language in real time. Taemin could hear his own words being translated into sounds like music and clicks and electronic tones. The human delegation was seated in a section marked for new members. They were the first new species to join the Galactic Council in over 50 years. Most of the other beings had been part of this community for centuries or even thousands of years. "Welcome to our newest members," said the council speaker. She was a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms who represented one of the founding species. "Today, we formally recognize the planet Earth and its dominant species as members of our galactic community." The speech went on for an hour. It talked about the history of the Council and the responsibilities of membership and the hopes for peace and cooperation. Taemin listened carefully, but he also watched the other beings in the hall. Most seemed bored or polite. A few watched the human delegation with obvious curiosity, but some watched with expressions that looked like anger or fear. When it was time for the human response, Ambassador Choi stood up and gave his prepared speech. He thanked the Council for accepting humanity and promised that Earth would be a good member of the galactic community. He talked about human values like cooperation and exploration and the desire to learn from other species. Then the ceremony was over and the real work began. Different groups of aliens approached the human delegation to introduce themselves and exchange formal greetings. Taemin found himself talking to a Veltari trader named Jek, who spoke perfect English. "Your species has made impressive progress in a very short time," Jek said. His crystal body reflected the lights of the hall and made rainbow patterns on the walls. "We have studied your historical records and found them quite fascinating. Humans have always been curious about the world around them," Taemin said. "We are excited to learn about the galaxy and find our place in it." "Yes, your place," said Jek, and something in his tone made Taemin pay closer attention. "That is what we all want to understand. Where exactly do humans fit in the order of things?" Before Taemin could answer, a large Morkan warrior approached them. He was covered in natural armor and had claws that could tear through steel. His name was Ket-An, and he moved like a predator even when he was trying to be diplomatic. "The humans interest me as well," Ket-An said in a voice like grinding stone. "Your species has such a violent history, yet you send diplomats who speak of peace. This seems contradictory." "Perhaps," said Taemin. "But many things that seem contradictory at first become clear when you understand them better. Humans learned long ago that those who understand war best are often the ones who value peace most." Jek and Ket-An exchanged a look that Taemin pretended not to notice. There was something happening here that was bigger than just casual diplomatic conversation. These two species were traditional enemies, but they were working together now. That was worth paying attention to. The reception continued for several more hours. Taemin spoke with dozens of different beings and learned about their worlds and cultures. He answered questions about Earth and human society and tried to build the foundation for future cooperation. Most of the conversations were friendly and hopeful. But he could not shake the feeling that some of the beings he met were studying him like scientists studying a dangerous animal. They asked too many questions about human military capabilities and not enough about human art or philosophy. They wanted to know about weapons and tactics and the size of Earth's armed forces. When the day finally ended, Taemin returned to his quarters on the human ship. The rooms were small and simple compared to the grand spaces of the station, but they felt safe and familiar. Haina brought him a report on all the meetings that had been scheduled for the next few days. "Sir," she said, "I noticed something odd about the meeting requests. All 5 species that want private meetings have asked to meet with you specifically rather than with Ambassador Choi Taemin looked at the schedule. She was right. In normal diplomatic protocol, the senior ambassador would handle the most important meetings. For them to request the cultural attaché instead was unusual. They probably think I will be easier to influence than the ambassador," he said. "Or maybe they want to test how much the junior members of our delegation know about policy." Haina did not look convinced, but she nodded and left him alone. Taemin sat by the small window in his quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth with its blue oceans and white clouds and 7 billion humans who were counting on this mission to succeed. He thought about the conversations he had today and the looks that passed between former enemies who were now working together. He thought about questions that focused on human military strength and requests for meetings that did not follow normal diplomatic procedures. In his experience, when people started asking the wrong, 3 days passed and Taemin attended meeting after meeting with different alien species. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They would start by talking about trade or cultural exchange or scientific cooperation. Then they would ask questions about Earth's military and how humans fought wars and what weapons they had developed. The Veltari wanted to know about human manufacturing capabilities and how quickly Earth could build ships or weapons if needed. The Morkan asked about human combat tactics and warrior traditions. The Sektoth were interested in human psychology and how humans reacted under stress or threat. Taemin answered all their questions politely, but he gave them only information that was already public. He talked about human history and philosophy, and the lessons Earth had learned from its past conflicts. He did not mention classified military capabilities or strategic planning or the real size of human armed forces. "You speak of peace often," said Jek during their second private meeting. The Veltari's crystal body was darker than before, and the lights inside it moved faster. "But your species has never known true peace. Even now, Earth maintains large armies and powerful weapons." "Humans believe that strength protects peace," Taemin said calmly. "A person who cannot defend themselves cannot truly choose peace because they have no other option." Jek made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "And what if your species decides that peace is not enough? What if humans choose to expand beyond your single world and take what belongs to others?" This was the real question that all of them had been building up to. Taemin had heard similar concerns from every species he had met with. They were all afraid that humans would become conquerors, like some of the ancient races that had nearly destroyed the galaxy thousands of years ago. "Humans expand through cooperation, not conquest," Taemin said. "We joined the Galactic Council because we want to be part of something larger than ourselves. We want to learn and grow and contribute to the peace that already exists here." But Jek did not look convinced, and neither did the other species when Taemin gave them similar answers. They had made up their minds about humans before these meetings even started. They were looking for confirmation of their fears, not trying to understand the truth. That evening, Hai-Na knocked on his door with her tablet full of new information. She looked worried and tired from analyzing data all day. "Sir, I have been monitoring communication patterns on the station," she said. "The 5 species that have been meeting with you are also meeting with each other. They are using encrypted channels and meeting in private areas where our scanning equipment cannot reach them." Taemin was not surprised, but hearing it confirmed made the situation more serious. "What kind of meetings?" "Short, frequent contacts that look like planning. Sessions," Haina said. "And they have been accessing the station's database to study human ships and the layout of our quarters. They also requested detailed information about tomorrow's tour of the reactor facility." The tour was supposed to be a gesture of trust and openness. The station crew would show the human delegation how their power systems worked and explain the technology that kept the massive structure running. It was an honor that was usually reserved for very important visitors. "Have you shared this information with Commander Kim?" Taemin asked. "Yes, sir, and she is increasing security around our delegation," Hyena said. "But the station regulations limit what we can do. We cannot carry weapons or scanning equipment in most areas, and our security team cannot enter restricted sections without permission." Taemin thought about this problem. If someone wanted to hurt the human delegation, the reactor tour would be a perfect opportunity. The facility was isolated from the main station and had limited access points. It would be easy to arrange an accident that would eliminate the humans while making it look like a technical malfunction. "Tell Commander Kim that I want to proceed with the tour as scheduled," he said. "But ask her to position her team as close to the reactor facility as station regulations allow." Haina looked surprised. "Sir, if there is a threat, should we not cancel the tour and request additional protection? If we cancel now, we will look afraid and weak," Taemin explained. "That will not help humanity's position in the council. And if someone is planning to attack us, they will just find another opportunity. It is better to meet the threat when we expect it than when we do not." The next morning, Ambassador Choi gathered the human delegation for a final briefing before the reactor tour. The group included Taemin and Haina plus Dr. Lee and 2 other scientists who were excited to see alien technology up close. I have been thinking about the security concerns that Commander Kim raised, Ambassador Choi said. Perhaps we should send a smaller group on this tour. I volunteer to stay behind, said Dr. Park, who was the youngest member of their science team. If there is any danger, I do not want to risk the whole delegation. No, said Taemin quietly. We all go together, or we do not go at all. We cannot show the Council that humans are afraid of normal diplomatic activities. Ambassador Choi studied Taemin's face for a moment. The older diplomat had worked with many different people over the years, and he had learned to read expressions and body language. Something in Taemin's manner suggested that he was not just being diplomatic. He was being tactical. Very well, Ambassador Choi said. But we follow Commander Kim's security protocols exactly. The reactor facility was located in the lower levels of the station, where the artificial gravity was stronger and the corridors were narrower. Their guide was a Felnari engineer named Tok, who had worked on the station for over 30 years. He explained that the reactor used controlled antimatter reactions to power the entire structure, plus provide energy for hundreds of ships that docked there every day. The safety systems are completely automated, Tok said as they walked through the outer chambers. No single person or even group of people could cause a malfunction that would threaten the station, but Taemin noticed that their route was taking them deeper into the facility than the normal tour path. He also noticed that some of the automated security doors had been propped open and some of the monitoring stations were unmanned. These were small details that most people would miss, but they suggested that someone had been preparing this area for something unusual. Haina was walking beside him and carrying her tablet as always. She was recording everything for their mission reports, but she was also nervous. Her eyes kept moving to the exits and emergency stations like she was memorizing their locations. "Sir?" she whispered. "My tablet is showing communication interference in this area. Someone is jamming our signals." This confirmed what Taemin already suspected. They were being led into a trap and their communications with the rest of the human delegation had been cut off. Commander Kim and her security team would not know where they were or what was happening to them. The group continued deeper into the reactor facility, following Tok through chambers filled with massive machines and energy conduits. The sound of the reactor core was like a giant heartbeat that made the walls vibrate with each pulse. The air smelled of ozone and heated metal. "This is the main control center," Tok said as they entered a large room with displays showing reactor status and energy output. "From here, we can monitor every system in the facility and make adjustments as needed." But when they entered the control center, the doors sealed behind them with a sound like thunder. Emergency lights began flashing and warning alarms started screaming. Tok backed away from the human delegation with an expression of fear and regret on his alien features. "I am sorry," he said in a voice barely audible over the alarms. "They said you would not be hurt if I cooperated. They said it would just be an accident." 5 figures emerged from behind the control consoles where they had been hiding. Jack was there with his crystal body glowing brighter than before. Ket On stood beside him with his claws extended and his armor plates shifting into combat position. 2 Sektoth researchers flanked them with energy weapons that hummed with deadly power. A Gralnek's energy being floated above them all like a small star that burned with cold light. "Humans of Earth," said Jack in a voice that echoed strangely in the sealed chamber. "Your species represents a threat to the peace and stability of this galaxy. We cannot allow you to spread beyond your world and bring chaos to civilized space, Ambassador." Choi stepped forward with his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "There has been a misunderstanding. Humans have no intention of threatening anyone. We came here seeking friendship and cooperation." "Lies," hissed one of the Sektoth. "We have studied your species extensively. Humans are violent and aggressive and expansionist. Your own history proves this. Every time humans have encountered other groups, they have conquered them or destroyed them. That was our past," said Dr. Lee. "Humans have learned from our mistakes. We have evolved beyond the need for conquest and war." Catan made a sound like laughter, but without any humor. "Species do not change their fundamental nature. Predators remain predators. Warriors remain warriors. Humans will always be what you have always been." The energy weapons in the room were now pointing at the human delegation. Taemin counted 5 attackers plus Tok, who was cowering near the exit controls. The sealed doors would not open. Without the proper codes, and the communication jamming meant no help was coming. The name hit the attackers like a physical blow. Jek's crystal body flickered and dimmed. Ketan's claws retracted slightly, and his armor plates shifted nervously. Even the energy being seemed to pulse with uncertainty. "Impossible," whispered one of the Sektoth. "The silent storm is a human myth, a story they tell to frighten their enemies." "No myth," said Hena, and her voice was steady, despite the fear in her eyes. During Earth's unification wars, one man ended decades of global conflict in 3 months. He moved through armies like a ghost. Weapons failed when he appeared. Entire military compounds would go silent in the night, with no survivors among those who threatened innocent people. Taman remained perfectly still while Hena spoke. He looked like the same quiet diplomat who had been serving tea and discussing poetry for the past week. But something had changed in his posture and the way he held his head. The other humans in the room were staring at him with expressions of shock and growing understanding. "Legends," said Jek, but his voice lacked conviction. "Human propaganda designed to make their enemies afraid." "Look at him," Haina said, pointing at Taemin. "Really look at him. Have you ever seen anyone stand so still while surrounded by weapons? Have you noticed how he always knows where every exit is and how many people are in every room? Did you think it was coincidence that the most peaceful man in our delegation volunteered for the most dangerous assignment?" Ambassador Choi was staring at Taemin with dawning horror. Pieces of information were falling into place in his mind. The way Taemin had insisted on taking this tour despite the security risks, his calm reaction to threats, and his detailed knowledge of military tactics. The fact that his personnel file had so many classified sections that even the ambassador could not read them all. "Sir," Ambassador Choi said quietly, "is this true?" Taemin looked at his superior with sad eyes. "I hoped it would not matter." He said, "I hoped we could build peace without anyone needing to know about the past." Ketan snarled and raised his weapon higher. "Human lies and deception. Even if this story were true, it would only prove that your species cannot be trusted. You are right about one thing," Taemin said, and his voice was different now. Colder, more precise. "My species cannot always be trusted. Neither can yours, apparently." The Morcon warrior fired his energy weapon at Taemin's center of mass. The bolt of plasma should have burned through his body and killed him instantly. Instead, Taemin was no longer where the weapon had been aimed. He had moved faster than any human should be able to move, and the energy blast hit the wall behind where he had been standing. Before Ketan could fire again, Taemin was beside him. The human's hand struck the warrior's wrist with surgical precision, and the weapon fell to the floor with a metallic clatter. Ketan tried to slash with his claws, but Taemin caught his arm and twisted it in a way that made the alien scream, in pain. "I asked you to reconsider," Taemin said, as he threw the much larger alien across the room. Ketan hit the control console and collapsed in a heap of twitching armor plates. "I really did hope you would listen." The two Sektoth opened fire at the same time with weapons that could melt through steel. Taemin rolled behind a support pillar as energy bolts scorched the air where he had been standing. Pieces of the floor exploded into molten metal, and the smell of burned electronics filled the chamber. "Impossible," one of the Sektoth hissed. "No biological being can move that fast." "You have not been paying attention to human biology," Taemin called from behind. "Cover." "We evolved as persistence hunters. We can run for days without stopping. We can survive injuries that would kill most species. And some of us learned to be very, very good at not being where our enemies expect us to be." The Grailneck's energy being flew toward Taemin's position while building up power for a massive electrical discharge. Its form blazed like a miniature sun, and the air around it crackled with deadly energy. But when it released its attack, the pillar was empty, and Taemin was somehow behind it. The human jumped up and grabbed what passed for the creature's core. The energy being shrieked as Taemin's touch disrupted its cohesion. Bolts of electricity arced between them, but instead of burning the human, they seemed to be absorbed into his body. "Fascinating," Taemin said as he held the struggling creature. "Your people studied human biology, but you missed some important details. Humans can absorb and redirect electrical energy under certain conditions. We learned this during experiments with our own weapons technology. He threw the energy being at one of the Sectoth. The alien tried to dodge, but the disrupted creature exploded in a burst of electrical feedback that overloaded his weapon and sent him crashing to the floor unconscious. Jack had been backing toward the exit controls while his allies attacked. His crystal body was glowing brighter as he charged up his own weapon systems. The Veltari could generate focused energy beams that could cut through almost any material. "Stay back," Jack warned as Tai Min turned toward him. "I can seal us all in here and flood the chamber with radiation from the reactor core. We will all die, but your species will be remembered as terrorists who destroyed a peaceful diplomatic station." "No," said Tai Min, and he was moving again. "We will not." Jack fired his energy beam, but Tai Min had already predicted the angle and trajectory. He slid under the beam and came up beside the crystal alien. His hand struck a specific point on Jack's body, and the Veltari's internal light flickered and went out. "Pressure points," Tai Min explained as Jack collapsed. "Every species has them. Your people are crystalline, so your energy flow follows predictable patterns. Disrupt the right node, and the whole system shuts down temporarily." The last Sectoth was trying to crawl toward a backup weapon, but his legs were not working properly from the electrical feedback. Tai Min walked over and knelt beside him. "Please," the alien gasped. "We were only trying to protect the galaxy from a threat, I know," Tai Min said gently. "Fear makes people do terrible things. But you chose the wrong target and the wrong method." He touched a spot on the Sectoth's neck and the alien went limp. Not dead, but unconscious, and no longer a threat to anyone. The reactor chamber was silent, except for the low hum of machinery and the sound of the human delegation breathing hard. Ambassador Choi and the scientists were pressed against the far wall, staring at Tai Min like they had never seen him before. Haina was sitting on the floor where she had fallen when the fighting started. There was blood on her forehead from a piece of debris, but she was conscious and alert. Tai Min knelt beside her and examined the wound carefully. "It is not serious," he said, "but you should not move too quickly until we can get you medical attention." "Sir," she whispered, "I am sorry I revealed your identity, but they were going to kill us and I thought—" "You thought correctly," Tai Min said, "and you probably saved all our lives. Thank you." He helped her stand and then turned to the rest of the delegation. Ambassador Choi was looking at him with a mixture of respect and fear. Dr. Lee and the other scientists seemed to be in shock. "I know you have questions," Tai Min said, "and I will answer them. But first, we need to get out of here and contact our security team." He walked over to where Tak was cowering near the door controls. The alien engineer was shaking and muttering apologies in several different languages. "Open the doors," Tai Min said quietly. "And do not make me ask twice." Tak's hands shook as he entered the unlock codes. The massive doors slid open with a deep rumbling sound. Beyond them was a corridor that led back to the main station levels. "How did you know?" "Ambassador," Choi asked as they walked toward the exit. "How did you know this was going to happen?" "Experience," Tai Min said. "When former enemies start working together, it usually means they have found a bigger enemy to focus on. When diplomatic meetings focus on military capabilities instead of cultural exchange, it means someone is planning something aggressive. When security systems fail and communication gets jammed, it means the trap is about to close. And you came anyway," said Dr. Lee. "You walked into a trap that you knew was waiting for you." "Sometimes walking into a trap is the only way to deal with it," Tai Min explained. "If we had tried to avoid this confrontation, they would have found another way to attack us. This way, we controlled the circumstances and the outcome." They reached the main corridor and found Commander Kim waiting with her full security team. The soldiers looked relieved to see the delegation alive and alert. They also looked nervous about the reports they had been receiving from the reactor facility. "Sir," Commander Kim said, "we lost contact with you 40 minutes ago. When we tried to enter the facility, we found that all the access codes had been changed. What happened down there?" "We had a misunderstanding with some of our hosts," Tai Min said. "It has been resolved, but there are several aliens in the reactor control room who will need medical attention." Commander Kim looked at him carefully. She was trained to read people and situations, and she could see that something significant had happened. The delegation looked shaken, and Haina was injured, and there was something different about Tai Min's posture and manner. Should I alert station security? She asked. Yes, said Ambassador Choi. And request an emergency session with the full Galactic Council. We need to discuss this incident with all the member species. News of the incident spread through the station faster than light through vacuum. Within hours, every species in the Galactic Council knew that the quiet human diplomat had single-handedly defeated 5 attackers in armed combat. The details grew, more dramatic with each telling until some stories claimed he had fought off an entire army. The emergency council session was called for the next morning. Representatives from every member species filled the Great Assembly Hall, while security, forces from a dozen worlds stood guard. The atmosphere was tense and electric, with barely controlled fear and curiosity. Tai Min sat in the human delegation section wearing the same simple black suit he had worn every day since arriving at the station. His hands were folded calmly in his lap, and his expression was peaceful. To anyone who did not know what had happened, he looked exactly like the mild-mannered cultural attaché he was supposed to be. But everyone in the hall knew what had happened. They had all read the reports and seen the security footage and heard the testimonies from the survivors. The being sitting quietly in the human section was not just a diplomat. He was something much more dangerous. The council speaker called the session to order with her 4 arms raised for silence. Her silver skin reflected the lights of the hall, and her voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast chamber. We are here to address a serious incident that occurred yesterday in the reactor facility of this station, she said. 5 members of our community attempted to harm the human delegation through deception and violence. This action was taken without the knowledge or approval of their governments or this council. A low murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Some species were angry that their members had acted without authorization. Others were nervous about how humans might respond to an attack on their representatives. The human delegation has requested permission to address this council directly, the speaker continued. Ambassador Choi will speak for Earth. Ambassador Choi stood and walked to the center of the hall where a speaking platform allowed him to be seen and heard by all the assembled beings. He looked older than he had a week ago, and there were new lines of stress around his eyes. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, humanity came to this station seeking friendship and cooperation. We hoped to find our place in the galactic community as peaceful partners in exploration and knowledge. He paused and looked around the hall at faces that belonged to species from across the galaxy. Instead, we found fear and suspicion. You decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed into your community. You made this decision based on our history rather than our intentions, the Morkan representative stood up in his section. He was even larger than Ketan had been, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. Your history is one of violence and conquest. Why should we believe that humans have changed their fundamental nature? Because, said Ambassador Choi, you have met one of our most dangerous individuals and discovered that he uses his abilities to protect rather than to threaten. Taemin Park could have killed everyone who attacked him yesterday. Instead, he chose to disable them and minimize harm even to those who were trying to murder him. A Veltari representative whose crystal body pulsed with nervous energy spoke next. We have heard the stories about this silent storm. If they are true, then humanity possesses individuals capable of mass destruction. How can we trust a species that creates such weapons? Ambassador Choi looked back at the human section where Taemin was sitting. The quiet man nodded slightly and stood up. A hush fell over the entire assembly as he walked to the speaking platform. I am Taemin Park, he said in his soft, calm voice. You know me as a cultural attaché, but that is not the whole truth. During Earth's unification wars, I was a soldier who did terrible things for what I believed were good reasons. He stood in the center of the vast hall, surrounded by beings who could destroy him with their technology or their natural weapons. But somehow he seemed to fill the space with his presence despite his small size and quiet manner. I killed many people during those wars, he continued. Warlords and terrorists and anyone who threatened innocent civilians. I became very good at ending conflicts quickly and permanently. Some of you have studied human history, so you know that our wars were brutal and costly. The unification wars alone killed over 50 million people in 10 years. The numbers hung in the air like a physical weight. Many of the alien species had never experienced conflicts on such a scale. Their wars were typically smaller affairs between neighboring colonies or trade disputes that lasted months rather than years. Then one day the wars stopped, Taemin said. Not because armies were defeated or territories were conquered. They stopped because the people who started them and profited from them were no longer alive. It took me 3 months to find and eliminate every major war leader on 7 continents. A ripple of fear ran through the assembly. They had read about the silent storm in historical documents, but hearing the details from the man himself made it real in a way that frightened them. When the wars ended, I had a choice, Taemin continued. I could use my abilities to build an empire and rule through fear. Many of Earth's population would have followed me after I brought them peace. Or I could find another way to serve humanity and make sure that such wars never happened again. He turned slowly to look at different sections of the assembly. His gaze lingered on the Morkan warriors and the Veltari traders and the other species that had been involved in the attack. I chose to become a diplomat because I understand what violence costs, he said. I have seen what happens when people choose fear over trust and aggression over cooperation. The price is always higher than anyone expects, and it is paid by innocent people who never wanted to fight. A small alien with feathered wings stood up in the observer section. She belonged to a species that had only recently joined the council, and her voice was high and musical. But you are still dangerous, she said. Even if you choose peace now, you could change your mind later. How can we trust someone with so much power? Taemin smiled sadly. You cannot, he said. Trust is not about removing all danger. Trust is about believing that someone will make good choices, even when they have the power to make bad ones. The energy being that had survived the attack on the reactor facility pulsed weakly from the medical section where he was recovering. His voice was like static when he spoke. We attacked you because we believed humans would eventually attack us, he said. We thought we were defending ourselves against a future threat. I know, Taemin said gently. Fear makes intelligent beings do foolish things. But you made a fundamental error in your reasoning. You assumed that because humans can be dangerous, we will be dangerous. You never considered that we might choose to be something else, the Sectoth. Representative hissed softly. Your own history proves that humans always choose violence when they feel threatened. Look at what you did yesterday when we threatened your delegation. Look more carefully, Taemin replied. Yesterday I was threatened by 5 armed beings in a confined space. I could have killed all of you within seconds. Instead, I disabled you with minimal force and made sure you received medical attention. If humans always choose maximum violence, then why are you still alive? The question hung in the air unanswered. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they realized the implications. The human had been in complete control of the situation and could have eliminated his attackers easily. His choice to show restraint said more about human nature than any diplomatic speech could. The council speaker raised 2 of her arms for attention. The question before us is not whether humans are dangerous. Clearly they are. The question is whether they can be trusted to use their power responsibly. We sent our most dangerous individual as a peace negotiator, Ambassador Choi said from his position near the platform. We did not hide his abilities or disguise his nature. We simply let him show you through his actions what humanity values and how we choose to behave. A massive creature that looked like a living mountain spoke from the ancient species section. His voice was so deep that it made the floor vibrate. Your species fascinates us, he rumbled. Most races become less violent as they develop technology and join galactic civilization. Humans seem to have become more disciplined about violence while retaining their full capacity for it. We learned that strength without wisdom is destruction, Taemin said. But we also learned that wisdom without strength is helplessness. The goal is to have both and to use them in balance. The Growlneck's energy being flickered as he tried to speak again. What guarantee can you give that humans will always choose restraint? What happens when your species faces a threat that cannot be reasoned with? Taemin was quiet for a long moment before answering. Then we will do what we must to protect innocent life, he said finally. But we will not do it lightly or gladly, or without trying every other option first. That is the best guarantee any species can give. The Great Hall fell silent as delegates considered his words. They were being asked to trust a species that had just demonstrated capabilities far beyond what anyone had expected. The quiet diplomat standing in their midst could have conquered the entire station if he had chosen to do so. Instead, he had offered them friendship and cooperation. The council recess lasted for 6 hours while representatives from every species debated humanity's place in the galactic community. Through the viewing windows of the Great Hall, Tai Min could see alien ships arriving and departing as governments across the galaxy sent new instructions to their delegates. When the session resumed, the atmosphere in the hall had changed completely. The casual dismissal and barely hidden contempt that many species had shown toward humans was gone. Now there was wariness and respect and something that might have been fear. The council speaker stood at her podium with all 4 arms raised for attention. Her silver skin had taken on a darker tone that reflected her serious mood. The council has reached several decisions regarding the recent events and their implications for galactic relations, she announced. First, we formally condemn the unprovoked attack on the human delegation. The individuals responsible will face judgment by their own governments according to their laws and customs. A murmur of approval ran through the assembly. Justice was important to most galactic species even when they disagreed about everything else. Second, the speaker continued, we acknowledge that our understanding of human capabilities was incomplete. We failed to recognize that Earth's violent history had produced not just capacity for destruction, but also wisdom about when and how such capacity should be used. Tai Min noticed that several delegates were watching him as the speaker spoke. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to admiration to barely controlled terror. He had become a symbol of something larger than himself. Third, we hereby grant full membership status to Earth and its human population. All rights and responsibilities of council membership are extended immediately and without restriction. This announcement brought mixed reactions from the assembly. Some species applauded while others sat in thoughtful silence. A few looked distinctly unhappy about the decision, but none voiced objections. Finally, the speaker said, we extend an invitation to Earth to participate in our mutual defense agreements and peacekeeping operations. The galaxy faces many challenges, and human capabilities could prove valuable in addressing threats to innocent life. Ambassador Choi stood to respond for humanity. His voice was steady despite the magnitude of what was being offered. Earth accepts full membership in the Galactic Council with gratitude and humility, he said. We pledge to honor our responsibilities and contribute to the peace and prosperity of all member species. We also accept the invitation to participate in mutual defense with the understanding that human forces will be used only to protect innocent life and maintain lawful order. The formal ceremony concluded with the traditional exchange of documents and symbols representing Earth's new status. But Tai Min could see that the real work was just beginning. Dozens of species were already approaching the human delegation with requests for private meetings and discussions about cooperation. Over the following weeks, the character of those meetings was completely different from the interrogations that had preceded the attack. Now alien governments wanted to know about human technology and tactics and military organization. They asked about training methods and strategic doctrine and the possibility of joint operations against common threats. The Veltari, who had been so suspicious before, now offered extensive trade agreements that heavily favored human interests. The Morcon requested military advisors to help train their warriors in new combat techniques. Even species that had not participated in the original conspiracy seemed eager to establish strong relationships with Earth. They are afraid of us, He Na observed during one of their planning sessions. Her injury had healed completely, but she still touched the spot on her forehead where the bandage had been. They want to make sure we are allies rather than enemies. Fear is not the foundation for lasting friendship, Tai Min said, but it can be the beginning of respect, and respect can grow into trust if we are patient and consistent. Commander Kim had expanded the human security presence on the station after receiving new authorization from Earth. Her team now included specialists in alien psychology and xenobiology, as well as traditional military personnel. But their primary mission remained protective rather than aggressive. Sir, she said during one of her regular briefings, we are receiving intelligence, reports about several conflicts in distant sectors where human involvement has been requested. The Council wants to send peacekeeping forces to 3 different systems, and they have specifically asked for human military advisors. This was the opportunity that Tae-min had both hoped for and dreaded. Humans could prove their commitment to galactic peace by helping to resolve conflicts, but it would also mean revealing more about human military capabilities and potentially becoming involved in ancient disputes that had nothing to do with Earth. What kind of conflicts? He asked. Border disputes between established species, Commander Kim replied. Pirates raiding trade routes in neutral space, and a situation where colonists from 2 different worlds are fighting over mining rights on an uninhabited planet. These were exactly the types of problems that the Galactic Council existed to solve, but traditional peacekeeping methods had been ineffective, and the conflicts were escalating towards system-wide wars. The Council believes that human expertise in ending conflicts quickly and decisively could prevent millions of casualties, Commander Kim continued. But they want assurance that human forces will not exceed their mandate or pursue independent objectives. Tae-min thought about this request for several days. Earth could establish itself as an important member of the galactic community by successfully resolving these conflicts. But failure or excessive use of force could confirm the worst fears about human nature and destroy everything they had accomplished. Tell the Council that Earth will provide military advisors and limited support forces, he finally decided. But make it clear that humans will not take primary responsibility for any operation. We will assist and advise, but the final decisions must come from the affected species themselves. The first test came sooner than expected. A trade convoy was attacked by pirates while traveling through a supposedly safe corridor between 2 major systems. The pirates used advanced weapons and tactics that suggested they had backing from one of the major criminal organizations that operated in the galactic frontier. A joint task force was assembled with ships and personnel from 6 different species. The human contribution was small but strategically important. Commander Kim led a team of 12 specialists who brought unique capabilities to the operation. Tae-min insisted on accompanying the task force despite protests from Ambassador Choi and the Council leadership. His official role was as an observer and cultural liaison. His real purpose was to make sure that human forces did not exceed their mandate or create new problems while solving old ones. The operation lasted only 3 days, but its effects rippled through the galactic community for months. Human tactical analysis identified the pirates' base of operations and predicted their response patterns with uncanny accuracy. Human technology allowed the task force to approach undetected and disable the criminal organization without a single civilian casualty. Most importantly, human discipline ensured that captured pirates were treated according to galactic law rather than being eliminated as battlefield threats. This restraint impressed the other species more than any display of superior firepower could have. "Your people fight like they have nothing to prove," observed the Veltari task force commander after the operation concluded. "Most species use excessive force to demonstrate their capabilities. Humans use minimal force to achieve their objectives." Word of the successful operation spread quickly through Council space. Requests for human assistance increased dramatically as species realized that Earth could provide effective military support without the political complications that usually accompanied such aid. But Tae-min was more interested in the long-term implications than the immediate praise. He spent his time meeting with representatives from species that had previously been neutral or hostile toward humanity. These conversations were different from the diplomatic exchanges that had characterized his early days on the station. "Your species confuses us," admitted a delegate from one of the ancient races during a private dinner. "We have observed galactic civilization for thousands of years, and we have never encountered people who become less violent as they become more capable of violence." "Perhaps," said Tae-min, "that is because we learned that true strength comes from choosing when not to fight, rather than from winning every fight." 6 months after the attack in the reactor facility, Tae-min found himself walking through corridors that had become familiar and comfortable. The other beings he passed no longer stared at him with fear or curiosity. They nodded respectfully, and some even smiled in whatever way their species expressed friendship. He had requested permission to create a small garden in one of the unused sections of the station. The Council had approved the project and even provided resources to help him import soil and seeds from Earth. The garden was now a popular destination for delegates who wanted to experience something uniquely human. Hana found him there one evening as he was carefully tending to a rose bush that had finally begun to bloom.